Julianne Graham from Razorleaf, and welcome to our Tech Tuesday series, What's New from Aras. We're really glad you're here with us today. Today's webinar is about Release 36 for Aras Innovator, and our host and the one who knows the most about this stuff is Milan Obradovic, and he's going to be leading us through the discussion. A couple of housekeeping notes real quick. We are recording this. We will share this recording shortly after this webinar. And if you have any questions, please put them in the questions panel as we go along, and we'll answer them at the end in our Q&A. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Milan.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Julianne. We should probably keep that intro for the future. I like that.
You like that?
But anyway, business as usual here. First, we're going to just kind of go over some of the key pieces of the release notes within Release 36, some other applications that have been upgraded. Should be relatively short and sweet today after the pretty big release of Release 35 and the updates to the user interface and all that. This is more of a building on the last release and continuing to implement a lot of the things that were introduced at the ACE conference this past year. So alongside that, there's some back-end updates that we're going to talk through a bit. Some important things to let your database administrators know, and we'll poke at that a little bit. Following that, per usual, it will be some Q&A, and then we'll talk a bit about our Razorleaf subscriber user group. But for those of you returning, welcome back, and for those of you joining for the first time, welcome to Tech Tuesday. Alrighty, so getting into Innovator 36 and some of the notable things that are coming out of release notes. One pretty decent update to the new Aras reporting application that's been introduced in the last 10 releases or so. Just some continued sort of housekeeping updates here. So introducing some support for exporting these reports to Excel, and then also providing a new user interface to allow you guys to filter your reports down and kind of reduce the need for alternate versions and kind of help you sift through the data that's being displayed in those reports a little better. The next thing is some more usability enhancements. So recently closed items is a new feature. Every time you close a tab, it just helps you navigate back to that just in case that tab was closed by mistake. And then there's some new functionality around list properties where we can now make use of search operators while we're doing that. So maybe we want to search or filter down by everything that is not a specific list item. We can now make use of those operators, as you guys may be familiar with them, through the blue bar search, etc. And then finally, there's some modifications to the back end. When Innovator 36 is installed, the default database configuration is set to enable Read Committed Snapshot Isolation. So for those of you not familiar, we'll kind of go into a little bit of what that means and what that could potentially mean for your environment. So getting to the reporting enhancements. So one is the option to export to Excel. So a new option has been added to the share dropdown here on the report user interface. So now we can export those directly to Excel. So it's going to maintain your formatting. It's going to maintain all the special characters you might be making use of. And then when that Excel is triggered, we're going to automatically name those files with the report title and date when that was created. So this is just going to make it easier for your users to work with that data, maybe use some of Excel's visualization tools if they're more comfortable with that, and make that data just more accessible to the rest of the enterprise. Alongside that is filtering. So within the report view, while it used to just be report settings, there's now this filtering option. So within your report configuration, we can specify specific categories that we might want to filter off of. In this case, for an ECO report, we might want to filter on the status of those reports. We specify if it contains or does not contain that specific category, specify the category, and it will parse all of your results down to what you want there. So instead of having to go into the report configuration, specify a filter, set a default value for that specific version of that report, this is all configurable directly within that report view user interface. All right, and then some usability enhancements. So a really nice comfort feature that they added here is the ability to navigate back to previously open and modified items. So these lists that we see here on the right are going to show the last 10 items that you had closed and modified. So recently closed items, you can see I had a few ECOs, some methods, some query definitions, and so on. As soon as I open that item and click X, it's going to append that to that list, so it's easily accessible to go back to. And when I was setting up my environment for this Tech Tuesday, it honestly was really valuable to not have to go back into the table of contents and search back up for those items. Same with recently modified. So once again, as soon as I click X or modify something, that list is going to be updated and it's going to show the last 10 items that I have performed any action to. Alongside that, the search operators within list views, when I'm filtering down a list, for example, an out-of-the-box example could be the type of requirement. I can search using a wildcard, a not, an or operator directly within those list properties. So just continuing to make things a lot easier for you guys to use. So really quickly, I wanted to pop into my Innovator environment and just kind of show some of these things in action. So for those of you who have been tagging along or have been upgraded to the newer versions of Aras, you're probably relatively familiar with the reporting application. But really quickly, I wanted to go back and poke through how these are built, how these are configured, and then how we could start to work with the data here. So for every report in the new Aras reporting application, you're going to specify the context of that report. So in this case, this is about ECOs. I'm going to specify my context as an express ECO. And also, by setting that context, I'm going to select a query definition that's sort of going to be the default data that I'm exposing to this report. So the query definition that I have built here is only going to be, I was pulling the title, the state, and the item number of all my express ECOs. However, through report configuration, I could also add new properties through this UI. So through my context item, I can see that there's plenty of other properties I don't currently have exposed in this report. I can select those and they will be appended to this report fields list. So there's a few other tools that the report provides. One is aggregations. So if I wanted to keep a good count of all of the express ECOs that I currently have in my environment, I can select a field that's going to be available on every ECO. The item number is required. I can set my function to count, and it's going to return that count when I retrieve that report. And the final thing here is filters. So based on the properties I have exposed in my report, I can specify a filter. So in this case, all I have is the express ECO state, the current status of that ECO. But let's say if I wanted to, I could also expose the owner of that ECO, the team that's in charge of that ECO, and create that new filter and add it here. When I add that filter and go to review my report, through this filters UI, I can view the filters that I have available to me. And if I wanted to parse through these reports, I can say, maybe I want this to filter down by everything that contains this specific string, does not contain this specific string, or maybe if it starts with that string. So in this case, I have my express ECO state contains, let's say new. When I apply that, it's going to parse that data down and really only show me exactly what I want to see there. So if I reset, refresh, it'll bring all that data back and display the report as it should be, or as originally configured. So another thing to poke at is the previously open and modified items. So that's going to be available here next to all of your tabs in this dropdown. Normally, this dropdown only showed your open tabs. So let's say if I had 20 tabs open and it extended past the width of my window, the rest of those open tabs would sort of be parsed down here. But now it gives me the ability to navigate to some items that I recently had open, or recently closed, recently modified. So for example, I had this part record open in the past. I can just select there and it will navigate me back to that without the need of opening my search, either my search grid or doing a quick search through the table of contents. It's really just helping you guys navigate quickly through the environment. And one last thing, I guess, to show, since we didn't really show it in the screenshot, but when I export these reports to Excel, it's going to spit out the title of my report and the existing date. And in my demo environment here, I don't have Excel installed, so I can't really open the file, but it's just going to expose the columns, all the metadata, etc., just allowing you guys to work with that within Excel versus within Aras. All right, so with that, we will flip back to our PowerPoint. So with these Tech Tuesdays, I've been trying to get things a little more visible to some of you guys. So if you're currently making use of the Essig CAD connector, Essig releases new versions of that connector once a quarter. And the most recent release that came out was actually in July, and there should be another release coming here in the next couple weeks or so, is connectors for PLM 1012, introducing support for Innovator up to 35. And there's plenty of new usability features that they've added. So the new store CAD and BOM operation combines the store, the CAD and store BOM operations into a single step, which can really cut down on your initial register process, as well as checking in any edits to that. Those of you at the ACE conference, or if you guys keep up with Essig's webinars, might be familiar with the BOM to CAD functionality. So for example, if I have a bill of materials without a top level assembly, I can select a BOM to CAD option within my Innovator UI. That's going to pull all those CAD files out and rebuild that assembly within my CAD tool. So in this case, they've expanded that functionality to also support NX, and now is supporting the 2026 Autodesk products that have been released. So think of AutoCAD as well as Inventor. All right, so I would also like to keep you guys informed on releases that are reaching end of life. As you may have seen in the past, release 14 through 19 now are currently in the end of life state. Release 20 will be hitting that in December, release 21 in March of 2026, while there's another swing of releases and that will be reaching end of life in the next summer. So really, what does end of life mean? Officially, they state 30 months after Innovator release, that release is deemed end of life. The date is going to be the last day of that designated month. They have been flexible with this in the past, as some of those end of life dates, they sort of group them together. If they are releases that are pretty similar, have the same back-end components, they will be grouped together. But once a release reaches end of life, Aras is no longer obligated to provide support for that release. So for those of you that are currently on any of these versions that are currently end of life or potentially reaching end of life soon, please reach out to Aras support, Razorleaf support if you're a subscriber through us, to get into that upgrade queue and start talking about and planning for an upgrade. As we've gone over in the past, upgrades post 14 have a few different routes that you can take. Through subscription, you're still able to log a ticket with Aras, join their upgrade queue, and move forward. But they also have provided the ability for or subscribers with sort of less complex environments, not too much customization, to go through and perform those upgrades themselves just by applying a patch on top of their current environment. And if you're a Razorleaf subscriber or you're curious, you can reach out to us and we can kind of help walk you guys through that upgrade as well. All right, so some pretty important back-end updates and things to consider. The top few of these have been noted for a while now, but just to keep you guys in mind, if you're new to Tech Tuesday, if you're currently running 2012 or 2014 versions of SQL Server, that's now deprecated and not supported with newer releases of Innovator as of release 22 or 32, as well as there are new framework requirements. So if you do, if you're planning an upgrade, .NET Hosting Bundle 8.0.1 is now required to run an Innovator. That was previously 6.06, as well as all the previous versions that have been supported in the past. And the last thing here is the updates to the SQL database configuration. So the default database configuration is now set to enable Read Committed Snapshot Isolation. So this is going to enhance concurrency management. It's going to minimize transaction blocking in multi-user environments. So if users are modifying the same row in a table, it's not going to block those those write operations, and it won't block any read operations while those write operations are occurring at the same time. So for those of you that aren't super familiar with SQL database management, I don't claim to be an expert myself, but just to kind of give you guys a quick rundown, and what this really means is when we're looking at the new enabled property within there, each query is now going to see the latest committed data at the time it runs. Reads aren't going to block writes, writes aren't going to block reads. And in this case, data can change between queries of the same transaction. So in a system like Aras, where it's a multi-user environment, there could be multiple users updating data at the same time. It's really good at supporting that high volume of traffic. With previous snapshot isolation, the transaction is going to see data as it was when the transaction started. So in the same way reads don't block writes and writes don't block reads, it's only at the transaction level, while the new read committed snapshot isolation is going to see it at the query level. So data is going to stay consistent across all the queries in that transaction, while in read committed snapshot isolation, that data can change between queries. If conflicts are detected in those two transactions with snapshot isolation, it's going to block that read and write and trigger an error to your SQL administrator. So if we need consistent results for a report, you probably want some snapshot isolation versus a read committed snapshot isolation. But this is really for something for you as an Aras administrator. If you're not the strongest SQL administrator, don't have the strongest knowledge on that, to talk this through and make sure that this isn't going to be an issue, and maybe block some processes within your environment. All right, and so another thing, as Aras reporting has had another update, and as Aras releases that have support for self-service reporting are reaching end of life, keep in mind that post release 31, I believe, SQL Server reporting or self-service reporting is no longer an application within Aras. Aras is intended for you to migrate your reports from SSRs into the new reporting application. This link on the screen is a tool that will allow you to export your self-service reports as queries, import them as query definitions, and then configure your report, set that context, and rebuild that data or that report as need be. So once again, if you're considering an upgrade, make sure you export all of your self-service reports before upgrading your Aras environment to avoid having to go ahead and rebuild those reports. All right, and then this is something that has come across my radar, and I wanted to pass it along to you guys as well. There is a upcoming webinar hosted by the Aras team that is focusing on the Aras medical device solution. That's going to be on September 24th. And if you guys have any questions or how to get access to this webinar, should be on the Aras website as upcoming events. If not, if you're interested in attending, feel free to let us know and we could help you get registered for this event. All right, any questions from the audience here?
Hey, nice job, Milan. Yeah, we got a question or two. So, first question from Angela. Is there any news about the user restrictions in the next open release?
So the current open release, the user restriction, I believe, sits at 50 still, and I don't really see that changing in the future. So as long as you're under 50 users, you should be able to use that open environment freely. As soon as you surpass that, I believe there will be some login blocking, and you'll need to make sure you deactivate the user count in order to get under that 50 mark.
Okay, great. Another question, is the recently closed modified functionality customizable?
Yeah, there's a few options to modify that to your liking. I think the most notable one is setting the number of items that you want visible there. Working with it and seeing, having 10 recently closed and 10 recently modified, it takes up a lot of your screen. So there's some options within the administration tools of Aras to set that to a lower number or a higher number if you even wanted that as well. So just something to keep in mind.
Okay, great. Are there any scenarios where we should consider disabling RCSI and reverting to the old default?
Yeah, I think that's something, once again, to go through when you're going through upgrade. So once you apply the 36 upgrade and you're doing your testing, if you have some processes that are performing multiple transactions at once, it's pretty complex business logic, I would just ensure that we're not running into any issues. Maybe ensuring that no data is being overwritten, ensure that the method is running cleanly and you're seeing the results you're expected. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to revert back to the old setting in the SQL database, as long as you have a good reason to and move against what Aras is moving towards.
Okay, great. Anyone has any questions, just drop them in the questions panel. Oh, got another one here. Regarding open release, currently disabled users are counted too. So as soon as you reach 45, Innovator cannot be used anymore. I wonder if they will fix that. I think it's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah, that is interesting. I kind of anticipated that if a user was specified as not log on enabled, it wouldn't count towards that count. That tends to be the case for subscription user number. So that might be something to follow up with Aras, maybe on the community forum, and see what they have to say about that.
Yeah, good. One more question. Since these characters are now reserved as search operators, is there any risk of my current list configuration breaking due to the usage?
Yeah, I mean, I think within the release notes, Aras specified, that's definitely something to look out for. Since those characters are now being used for searching within those list fields, there's a chance that if maybe you have a list that has percentages listed as a label value, if you search for 50%, it might give you some weird results. So definitely something to keep in mind as you're going through upgrade. Review your list configurations, make sure you're seeing the expected behavior. I think it would more affect the searching functionality versus just the functionality of your list. If you don't necessarily care about searching through your list items, well, selecting those properties, probably not something to worry about too strongly, but once again, just as you're going through upgrade, make sure you test and review that those things are working as expected.
Great. And anyone else have any other questions? Give it a few more seconds, but all right, I think we're good.
Alrighty. Well, one last slide here, just to make this visible for those of you who are Razorleaf subscribers. We're having our yearly user group conference in Indianapolis this year, from October 14th to the 16th. We have a pretty cool event planned. We got, I think, 4 subscriber presentations, as well as some partner presentations with Aras and the folks from Caddy, who have a very cool tool and would be great to check out, and maybe something we potentially show here on Tech Tuesday as well. But we have a great event planned in my old hometown of Indianapolis. So if you haven't registered yet and you're a Razorleaf subscriber, make sure you do. Use the QR code on the screen, and we'd love to have everyone we can. Julianne, I don't know if you have anything else to add here.
Yeah, no, I agree. If anyone has any questions about the event, please feel free to reach out to me. But we do have some really fun things planned. We usually have a great evening event on the middle night of the event, which I believe is Wednesday. We're grateful for Caddy and Aras sponsoring our event this year. So there's just going to be a lot of good information, a lot of good sharing, and it's big enough where you get a lot of value out of it. It's small enough where you get to talk to everybody. So it's the best of both worlds, and you really learn a lot from the Aras community. Everyone is very open to sharing what's going on and how they're using the product in their business. I have a couple more questions, if you don't mind here, Milan. Yep. So, it says, were you able to preview the next release version of Innovator? It shall contain numbers at the tabs that show if there is content. I'm not sure I understand that question fully.
I think I sort of understand. So is it around the tabs here? I'm not entirely sure. Can you repeat that, Joanne?
Yeah, it says I think she's hoping that maybe you'll cover this in the next webinar, but yeah, I'm sorry, Angela, I'm kind of confused by your question. Were you already able to preview the next release version of Innovator? So were you able to see the next version of the next release?
I currently don't have access to that yet, no.
Okay. All right, well, we'll have to wait till the next Tech Tuesday then. You have to be patient. All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I think that that wraps us up for today. Did you have anything else, Milan, or is that covers it?
No, that'll be it.
Okay, so, great. Thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate everybody joining us today, and we look forward to next time. Watch your email. We'll be sending you the recordings and invitation to the next Tech Tuesday. With that, we're going to end the webinar. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Milan.
Yep, thank you.
All right, bye.